Good Saturday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Marketing Corner. And again, I have special co-host David Bradley. How's it going, David?
Good morning. It's going well. How you doing?
Good. We've been together for a few hours this morning already.
Yeah.
Kind of going over
Great
stuff.
morning.
Yeah.
Great win last night.
Great win last night. It was,
Dodgers.
Yeah. I'm may or may not be hungover still from celebrating the win last night. Maybe.
Yeah, you didn't answer your phone.
Unofficially. You know, one of the beauties of the show and one of my biggest obligations to the audience is to make sure, and I don't consider myself unintelligent, but I got to make sure that this room is full of people that are way more intelligent than me, like yourself, and especially with today's special guest, Manny Turan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a large gap between you and I, Manny.
I wouldn't say that.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it.
I really
Yeah.
enjoy the opportunity to share stories and insights and really have a conversation here, which will hopefully open some eyes and create some motivation.
And we didn't know this, but you were questionable for today. You're suffering through a little bit of a toothache, so thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'll power through. No problem.
The next
at
time
all.
you're on the show, just in case, there's always a plan B. So if you are hurt the next time I bring you on, there's always a plan B.
All right, thanks for letting me know.
Thanks for powering through this.
Absolutely.
We'll get you to your dentist in 1 hour.
Okay, sounds good.
And there is that shot of Fireball in David's car still.
Emergency shot. I get
The
it.
emergency shot. How you been, Manny?
I've been doing great.
Yeah.
Been, pretty busy with both the main company that I'm running, IR Labs,
Yeah.
and obviously still working with Spark Partners and growing that agency as well. So been doing great.
Yeah. You know, when David and I were kind of getting ready for today's show, David, you asked me, what does Manny do?
Right, yeah.
Manny wears a lot of hats.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the things that intrigues me about you is most of us are very strong in one area or another. And we know we have deficiencies and we find somebody to help us out in those deficiencies, right? Manny, though, I mean, I've seen you talk about so many various topics. What are some of the things that are like the most passionate things that you do? I mean, it's hard. I can't describe you.
Sure. So I think if you zoom out far enough, you actually see that the thing that I like to do the most and the thing that I excel at doing is growing businesses.
Yeah.
And the idea of growing a business is like, for instance, the one that I'm running now as CEO, I'm growing the business. And if I go to helping another client or whether it's a coaching client or a consulting engagement, it's the same thing. So I'm really focused on the front of the business where they're going towards. I do have a lot of experience with operations, with HR, with a bunch of other things. I can help in that domain.
Right.
But where I really shine is in growing a business.
Do you grow a business from the very concept of it, or do you like to jump in something that you're intrigued by, knowing that it could be more from there?
It doesn't really matter to me at the end of the day. People ask, well, what does it mean to grow a business?
Right.
There's only one way to grow a business, and that's by selling more of what people want to buy. And you can talk about getting investment, you can talk about grants or this or that, but fundamentally, it's all about getting that revenue through the door. And then once you get the revenue, then you can use it on operations, on marketing, on sales, and everything else. But it's all about growing the business.
One of the things David here is doing with your Medicare business is not only you're looking for more clients, you're going, door to door, face to face, but you also look at buying other books, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With individuals that are ready to get out of the business and retire. I successfully picked up, just closed on a smaller agency yesterday. So I think that's like number 4, so it's like you either build it or you buy it, right?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's a simple acquisition. Have you ever been involved, Manny, in one of those, a business where an acquisition had to take place in order to take that next step?
Yeah, I've been involved in several acquisitions on both the purchasing side as well as the acquisition side, the one being acquired. And they both have challenges. They both have opportunities. As you'll realize during this conversation, I really like to rely on a lot of what's the vision of the company, whether you're trying to grow a company, sell a company, buy a company, what's the vision?
Right.
And that figuring out the vision is probably the single most important thing you can do it sounds trivial. It sounds very flippant sometimes. Oh, I want to buy a business because I want to grow more. I want to
Right.
add more book to my business, so to
Mhm.
speak. But beyond that, why? What's
Mhm.
really driving that?
Mm-hmm.
And I always say that people buy for personal reasons.
Mm.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
you're buying because you want a bigger house, because you want more freedom, because you want to, like, if you're working at a 9 to 5 and you're doing really well, you might want to impress your boss so you can get a raise or so you can get more time off or whatever it might be.
Mm. From your experience, say out of every 10 businesses out there, and I want to put you on the spot on this one too, David. How many businesses, one, actually have that vision, and two, the leadership actually shares it with their employees?
1 and 2.
Yeah.
One business
Yeah.
out of 10 has a crystal clear vision.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I would say of those 10,
Mm-hmm.
one actually will make sure that the employees all know it.
Right.
And then the other one will have maybe the vision in their mind and will
Mhm.
be able to communicate it, but it's not going to be running through the veins of all the employees there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you have a vision for yourself, David?
Yeah, personally, I do. Absolutely.
Not when you look in the mirror and check
I say-
yourself out or anything, but
Like
a real
I
vision for your
look in the
business.
mirror and say,
for
"I
your
love you."
business.
I want to expand on that a little bit too. So as far as in my business and agency, we also recruit and train agents to start their own business, right? So we're like the, general agency or field marketing organization. And, whether they're brand new to the business, no sales experience, no Medicare experience, or they're seasoned Medicare agents, right? We sit them down and we can help create that vision.
Yes,
Too.
exactly.
Mhm.
And like a brand new agent, I sit and tell them, and I told myself this too, 19 years in the business, but I've been on my own for 5 years,
Mhm.
as a independent agency owner. You got to give it 3 years.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to give it 3 years,
Yeah.
There's going to be ups and downs. You're going to want to throw in the towel,
Mm.
but you have to give it 3 years.
This may sound like a simple question, Manny, but what are the actual components of a vision?
So to
Great
understand,
question.
Thank you.
yeah, it is a great question.
Yeah.
To understand the vision, you've got to do a lot of soul searching.
Mhm.
And I always talk about when I do a consulting engagement or even a coaching engagement, I put a heavy load of introspection,
Mhm.
mindfulness, and you really have to understand yourself.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, the entrepreneur, the business owner, the executive, it's a lonely place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
especially if you're at the top,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
you don't always have the ability to have somebody else help you out immediately. So you have to look deep within.
Mm.
And there's other opportunities or other challenges that come up, like, hey, you've got payroll coming up and you don't have enough in your bank account, in your
Yeah.
business bank account. So how do you figure that out?
Yeah.
You draw from your personal bank account, or you call on a friend, whatever it might be.
Mhm.
So there's a heavy dose of introspection.
Mhm.
And I actually have a process that I work
Oh, wow.
with, that I have basically some questions that I ask,
Mhm.
and that helps to tease out that vision. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a psychology degree, but I've been doing this long enough and have had enough scars and
Mhm.
spoils
Mhm.
to be able to understand that fundamentally that vision has to do with where you see your legacy going.
Hmm.
A lot of it is about legacy.
Yeah.
And whether especially if you're younger, you're invincible, right? You're
Yeah,
invincible till you're
exactly.
probably 25.
Mm.
And then after that, you start to think about the future. And I mean, I just turned 51 recently.
Oh,
so
wow. Wow.
for
You
me,
look
I mean,
great.
I
Yeah.
still feel great, but you
Yeah.
think about your legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to get more into what you just said right now about the scars and the spoils of the journey of an entrepreneurship. Let's get into that during the next segment. But if you are listening out there, and I know you guys are listening, don't be bashful. You've got a question.
Call in and say hi.
Yeah, call in and say hi. 520-790-2040. That's 520-790-2040. You got to have a question for some of us here. So we'll be right back. And we are back with a marketing corner. Dave, are we live?
Yes, indeed, we are.
If you watched the game last night, after the game, and I kind of want to get into this, as far as, the right attitude that we need to have as small business owners and entrepreneurs. We're going to be very careful not to say anything inappropriate. But last night on national TV, my man Kike Hernandez was being interviewed after the game. And he was asked what makes this team, the Dodgers team, different than all the other Dodgers team that he's been on. he looks at Ken Rosenthal, the reporter, and asks, "Are we live?" He smirks and he says,
Yes, we are.
I'm not going to say anything inappropriate, Engineer John. But he says, because this Dodgers team, we don't give a care. Let's just say a care. Yeah. Right?
F-bomb, yeah.
Don't get close to that, David, right? But yeah, how much of when small business owners and entrepreneurs care too much about what other people are thinking? You said in the first segment, Manny, that, it's a lonely business.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very lonely, right? I mean, how much of that mindset where you just don't need to care about what other people are thinking?
It is at the top of the list.
Yeah.
I am a stoic. I read Marcus Aurelius. I try to do as much and live that stoic lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not easy because we're human beings. We have feelings, and I've made some mistakes. I've made many mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I've made some, I don't want to say enemies, but I've bruised people up in business, not physically. And here's the deal. I've always tried to do the best I can, and I've always done my best in keeping my ethics and keeping my guiding light.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard to do. In business, there's been opportunities that have been presented to me, we'll just say, that are in the gray.
Yeah.
And I have learned that those things that come up in the gray you need to stay away from the gray. Run away.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that, I say that business is a full contact sport.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get bruised, you're going to get hurt, but you're going to also have some major wins.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is about perseverance, and to kind of talk about a little bit of stoicism. The obstacle is the way. And that is something that is hard for a lot of rank and file folks to really understand. And sometimes I wish I didn't have this entrepreneurial bug in my head, because I'd maybe be content in a different way if I had a nice 9-to-5. Or if I worked at a government job. Nothing wrong with those, by the way.
Right.
But just the way that I'm wired.
Yeah.
My grandmother is an entrepreneur. She's 92 years old.
Wow.
My mother, my whole family, a lot of entrepreneurs. So for me, it was almost natural for me to go in that direction.
Yeah. We talked about, you talked about the first segment, the scars and the spoils of entrepreneurism. They're necessary.
They are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we started the show, we talked a lot about failure, right? I mean, that's one of the things that a few weeks ago, about a month ago now, I was on a panel discussion. I was part of the panel for a career day at Eller. And one of the underlying themes was, I'm afraid to fail, from all the students. There was one young woman that, she raised her hand. She's like, I'm afraid to actually get my first job because I don't want to fail, and speaking just to her eye to eye in front of this whole room full of students and other people on the panel, I was just like, you need to fail. You're going to fail. That's good. So just in your career, Manny, I mean, where would you be without failure?
I wouldn't be where I am now.
Right.
And I mean, failure is part of the way.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about the school system, and I have a lot of things to say about the school system, but
that's another 2 hours.
I keep those opinions to myself. But one of the things I will say is that it teaches children and young adults the wrong message.
Yeah.
It teaches them that if you fail, it is bad.
Yep, absolutely.
Right.
We talked about that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they come out of this 12-year process, 13-year if you tack on preschool or kindergarten or whatnot.
Yeah.
You come out of it being afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And, play is such an important aspect of failure, because you're playing a sport and you lose, or you're out there playing marbles. When I was a kid, of course, they're not doing that as much anymore. Now they're all tied to the games and
social media.
So it's just that whole dynamic's changed.
PS5.
Yeah. What are some of the things like with your sons? How would you teach them? Are there things at home that that you put them through and to let them know it's okay to fail?
Yeah, with children, as you know, you have kids. A lot of it, you can talk about it.
Yeah.
But until they actually experience it, they won't learn in the same way.
Right.
And I learned something the other day that was kind of eye-opening, and I know this is not a show about kids and all that, or parenting or whatnot. But
Well, it ties into the mindset, though.
it does.
Right.
So you know how when, especially for boys, I don't know how it is with little girls, but they turn 14, 15, 16, they start to push away from dad, and they start to like want to go out in their own direction, and whatever you say is not good anymore, not valid.
Right.
They turn into aliens. That's
They
what I call
do.
it.
Well, and the reason why there's some evidence that the reason why they do that is because evolutionarily speaking, they need to push away from the main tribe so they could go start their own tribe.
Yeah.
To grow.
So I don't want to call us a virus as humans, but we have to think about growth in that way, population growth.
Yeah.
And in order to make sure that our genes are cleaner and not inbred, you got to leave the tribe. You got to go
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know, I want to add to that real quick too. With my two sons, you know, they're 25 and 19. You know, and I've instilled in them and told them, like, you know, you are going to fail, right? Or you're going to make the wrong decisions. Not only just failing, but, you know, common sense wrong decisions.
Right.
You know, it's going to sting, it's going to hurt, it's going to knock you down, but don't let it define you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. When you look at organizations, or when you look into, you know, becoming a part of a new business, Manny, I mean, you know, are there common things that businesses aren't doing well or getting wrong? Do you see a pattern there?
There's a pattern, and I'll actually, there's probably a half a dozen things I can talk about, but I'm going to zero in on one in particular since we're talking about failure.
Okay.
And that is, in a business, the framework is set up so very much like school, failure is not an option. Failure is not good. If you fail in developing a product, you might lose your job, you might lose the company, whatever. So there is an actual framework that you can use today in your business to create this institution within your institution to then go out and pursue something. We call it a blank space team, also known as a white space team. Sir Richard Branson is one of the big voices of this. And what you do is you create a team within a team, and there's five things. There's 5 M's. You create a mission. What is say? So let me give it a little bit of a backdrop. Say you've got a plumbing business and you're exploring installing video cameras or doing something kind of not really in your core business.
Right.
You do this blank space team, and you create a mission. Okay, what's the mission of this? Okay, we're going to explore whether or not installing video cameras, security cameras, is an option. That's the first M. Then you set some metrics. Okay, in order to be successful, we need to be making $400,000 a year, whatever it might be, $100 million a year. And then the third M is you want to make sure that the management is figured out on both sides. That means, Sean, you're going to run this organization, and Dave, you're his boss, and you're going to leave him alone. Okay, you're going to, and then the fourth M is money. You got to make sure you have enough money to make that the metrics and everything else work. And then the last thing is the most important, and this is one that I've gotten wrong several times, and that is you have to build a moat around that team. When I had my business as Terra, we were developing a couple new products. You know, we were a service-based company. We're trying to do products, and a couple times we did the 4 of the 5 M's. And I remember this one time, we were halfway through this product development effort, and then an old customer came calling, a high-paying customer, and they said, "We want you to do a new project." So me trying to make sure the bottom line was covered and payroll, I took the guy that was running that product development team, I took him off that team, and I put him on the star team of the customer. Well, there was not a moat there at all. I just plucked him out. I broke all my rules. And what ended up happening is, we made a lot of money with this other customer, but we never got the product done. Because we lost that momentum, another M, and we basically ended up losing the market ultimately.
Wow.
I think you shared that story on the hot seat. I remember.
I might have done that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, what are some other areas, you know, do you think, like, how important is it, and how often do you see that there isn't the visionary and an integrator in place for a business?
It's very common to talk about that. You know, a visionary, that's your classic CEO type. This is the person that has the vision of the company in mind, and they're what they have to do is set and execute the vision of the company. Where are we going, and what are the metrics that are going to get us there? Who are the people? All that. You can think of it almost like the chief salesperson, right?
Yeah.
And then the integrator is how are we going to get there? So taking those people, what are their roles going to be? What are the processes internally that needs to be put in place in order to get there? And I know that that is pretty major, but I would say the number one thing that we see at Spark Partners that companies and entrepreneurs do not do is they don't really fully understand their value and their value delivery system in the context of trends. You've heard me talk about trends over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So, trends are really massive in understanding where the markets are going. And if you are not well-versed and understand trends, you're going to succumb to them.
Yeah.
And we can talk for hours and days about all these companies that missed the mark. What happened to Toys R Us? What happened to Blockbuster? What happened to Sears?
Yeah.
What happened to Kodak, who invented the digital camera? What happened to them?
Right.
They were once a powerhouse. Now they're a $100 million company.
Yeah.
And Intel right now is a little bit on the ropes because they missed the mark of where things are going.
Yeah. There's about once a week or so when I'm talking business with somebody that always mention trends. And I used to give you all the credit for that, Manny, but now I'm taking some of the credit.
Sure, absolutely.
But your podcast, the Spark Partners podcast, well, the other gentleman,
Adam Hartung.
it is fascinating. It is fascinating. If there's anything you get from today's broadcast or podcast, wherever you're listening, you got to check out the Spark Partners podcast. It is absolutely phenomenal. And it's about an hour long.
Yeah, it's about half an hour long. It's called the Business Trendsetter Podcast.
Yeah.
It's on all the, your favorite podcast forums, as well as on sparkpartners.com.
A lot of them you need to listen to twice. There's a ton of information between those two gentlemen right there. It is ridiculous. Do anything, and you say you can find it on Spotify.
Apple Podcasts, and then the video version is on sparkpartners.com if you want to see me and
how
Adam
handsome you are. Yeah.
How handsome, I don't know.
So we're going to head into the bottom hour of the break right now. So if you have any questions, please feel free to call 520-790-2040. You are listening to The Marketing Corner. And welcome back to The Marketing Corner. If you're watching this at a later date on YouTube or Spotify, I'm going to get in front of the camera real quick. There's a hot dog on my hat. It says Los Angeles, and it has the Dodgers dog. You guys notice that? I know you noticed it because we started talking hot dogs. And then the topic of Exxon came on. You like that segue, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the relationship between.
So one of the things that you kind of mentioned in the previous segment about, the most important things that companies miss, and I said value delivery under trends, that kind of like triad.
Yep.
So value is really what is the customer gaining from the experience with, or what's the promise that the customer is getting from you? And we'll talk about Netflix in a little bit because that's my favorite story about value and value delivery. But let's first talk about Exxon, Citgo, Shell. So all those top three, they are obviously, they refine petrochemicals. But if you look at the gas, when they refine gas and they sell it to their franchisees, right? They've got these gas stations. If you really peel back the layers, what is the true value of this gas station on the business side, not the customer side? But it could be to sell more hot dogs. Because at the end of the day, you need to realize that when you go to a gas station and the gas is $3.20 a gallon, they're likely buying that gas for $3 a gallon. There's not much margin at all in the actual gas or diesel. But they make all their money inside the concessions, soda, hot dogs, or whatever. In our most recent podcast, we talked about a company in, I think it was in Turkey, that is a kind of similar to Exxon, but the Turkish version of that, called MOL. And they actually brought in a new CEO that had this like amazing vision about what they wanted to do with the organization. I mean, how do you do an innovation on a gas station, right? So what he ended up doing is he started putting in some AI inside of the gas stations. Wow. So they could tell when the peak of hot dog sales are. so they could tell when the peak of soda sales are and all that. So they essentially made it made all these things fresher and more available to the customers because they had all this real-time data. The gas was just to get them there, right? And of course, with the shift into electric vehicles, you're now going to see situations where you've got to sit there for 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So you might as well build a lounge.
Yeah.
Put some TVs up there. Put some concessions that are more than just hot dogs. Maybe have something higher level, higher end concessions.
Oh yeah, I remember spending hours and hours at Subway at Rita and I-10 while I'm charging my car. Going in there doing work, grabbing a sandwich.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Netflix is one of your favorite topics.
Netflix, it is because it's one of these companies that held true to their value and their value delivery. And let me explain the difference. So value, of course, is that what is a customer gaining, not getting, gaining from the experience with working with you or from buying from you. So from the very beginning, their value was we deliver entertainment. Okay, we're talking about 15 years ago, that was 20 years ago, that was their value when they first started. And they were, of course, delivering DVDs by mail, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
And then they transitioned to a new, that's their value delivery is DVDs. The next chapter, they went to the board and they said, look, we're going to go into a new direction. We're going to close down 4 of these warehouses and we're going to do something called streaming. And the board was like, what is that? And the board was upset. Their stock dropped because they were going to kill the cash cow, of course. But they stayed true to their value because in that second chapter, they were still delivering entertainment. But their value delivery shifted from DVDs to streaming. And then they did it again from when they saw that everybody else was streaming. They said, you know what? We're going to actually become a production studio, a movie studio. So they made another shift, but all the way they deliver entertainment, they deliver entertainment, they deliver entertainment. And they are now the biggest production studio in the world. They surpassed Warner Brothers, Paramount, Fox, all those. They're the number one production company. And now they're going to be making another shift into gaming.
Yeah. Can you imagine the guys from Blockbuster, every time they see or hear Netflix, you know what I mean? It's just
cringe.
Yeah.
They had an opportunity to buy them twice.
Yeah. And
they just made the wrong decision.
Yeah. So do you think, given that scenario, the reason why the Dodgers play baseball is just to sell hot dogs?
At $20 a dog.
Yeah.
Merch.
Yeah. But kind of to that point, we were at I saw a Dodgers game this year in LA, and there was very few concession stands that actually sold the Dodger dog. It was primarily Japanese and Chinese food everywhere. So they were really catering to that audience that Shohei's brought, from Anaheim. And it was,
interesting.
Yeah, it was very, very interesting. There was way more Asian opportunities than there were hot dog stands. Way more.
Smart move.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that has to do with knowing your customer.
Exactly. Right.
And that's another one of the things on that list of what is it that a lot of companies don't do well, and they don't know their customers.
Right. Yeah. So I tell that story once in a while. But that's exactly it. They're just knowing the customers, knowing how much the influence that they've already paid for Shohei this first year. If you do the economics, I think all the money that they've earned from all the merch and the concessions and everything else. I mean, making the playoffs, etc. They've already made enough to pay for his. Was it $500 million contract?
Insane.
Yeah. So, in getting back to, and we'll get more into this heavily in the last segment, but when we're thinking about a legacy, do you think some people kind of sell themselves short on when they really want as their legacy?
I think they do. I think that a lot of people are, and this is to poke fun a little bit at some of the Instagram people out there that are talking about, sticking your neck out and this and that. But a lot of people are afraid of their own power, and they're afraid of what they're capable of. But the trade-off is you have to put yourself out there, and to kind of go back to the first thing we talked about, you got to be willing to fail,
right? And
you've got to be willing to make a few, I wouldn't say enemies, but people that don't like you.
Yeah.
You're gonna crack a few eggs in life, and I mean, it doesn't mean that you're gonna have to be mean about it. It's just gonna happen. And one of the biggest things that I took from my childhood to transitioning into adulthood is not caring as much about what people think.
Oh yeah, you
and,
can't.
And of
Yeah.
course now it's flipped the other direction where with social media, there's a persona that you need to be on social media,
Right.
and then that kind of bleeds into real life, and it's not really good for a lot of young people right now in life.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, with you just mentioned social media, and it's always ironic because that's where I kind of was my bread and butter was in social media. You know, when I first started my own business, it was exclusively creating content for my clients on social. However, the flip side of it, personally, I don't like social media.
Right.
I don't. You know, it's
That's
not,
why you're handling mine. I don't like it either.
but at the same time, the power of it, you know, and always make sure. I mean, I would not work with a client that wants to misuse it. You know, I've had a few that, you know, the content that they've wanted to post is one against most platforms' policies, but two, I mean, I'm not going to body shame nobody. I'm not going to, you know, make anybody feel bad into buying a service or product. And I had a ton of potential clients during COVID who wanted to scare people into buying their products, honestly. You know, so.
Well, there's the carrot and there's the stick, right?
Right, right. You got to know which one you got to pull out at particular times. As we get into the last segment here in about 30 seconds, again, if you have any calls for any of us, 520-790-2040. But we're going to get a little bit into what you foresee in your future, Manny. It's going to be a fun segment for all of us. So,
Okay, sounds great.
yeah. We are back with the Marketing Corner. Have you heard David Bradley's commercial right now? Every time he hears it,
I get chills. It's amazing.
You
Yeah, I
get
love
chills.
it. I love it.
Yeah. As with any the beginning segment of every week, I do like to thank John, our engineer. Appreciate you very much. You know, giving us the direction you do each and every week, and of course the sponsors of the show. First and foremost, Mr. Bradley. Woo!
Proud to be here.
Candace Seaton Photography, Jamar Jordan, Roger LaFay from LaFay Processing, Danny McPadden, Last Bridge Media. The two of you will be putting some videos together pretty soon, David.
Yes, sir.
And Mark Weiss, Sales Performance Strategies. Thank you all for your support. We just had a little mastermind this week. It was kind of cool with us.
Yeah,
huh?
it was. It was good
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, one of the little benefits of being part of the show.
Yep.
Making each one of us a little bit better.
Yes,
A
indeed.
little bit better. When you get a little bit better, man, where do you see yourself in the next year, 5, 10 years?
For me, it's going to be. I don't want to sound like it's more of the same, but it's bigger of the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I am working with this amazing company, IR Labs, and they've been around for 56 years. And I was entrusted by the family to grow it. And so that has been a real pleasure to do that. And, you know, with my Spark Partners business, you know, I like to have a few coaching clients, not very many. And I have a few right now, and those are very rewarding. And so what I'd like to do in the next couple of years is grow out to have a few more people working under Spark Partners to do some of that coaching.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of joking earlier about everybody's writing a book. I don't have any plans to write a book, but and this is, I mean, I think books are great. I read quite a bit, but for me, the one-on-one coaching, the impact that I can have, and if I create or when I create additional Spark Partners coaches, the impact that you create and the families that gain from that process, and the community gains. You know, we talk about 4 wins when our coaching clients win. They win, their families win, their employees win, and their customers win. And so those 4 wins are celebrated. I want to do more and more of that. And it really comes down to teaching them about trends, teaching them about value delivery. We talk about bias. We have a great course that we've had for years called Think Innovation. We also have another kind of a mini course called Unlock Growth. And I think more of that. That gets me excited. That gets me really energized. And I'm still a practicing CEO. So I'm not jumping in fully to Spark Partners, and I'm keeping this piston approach because for me, with my personality and my mindset, my strengths, if you ever looked into the Clifton Strengths Finder stuff, my strengths have to do with strategy, with being an activator, maximizer, communication, and ideation.
So speaking of Spark Partners a little bit, plug that a little bit more. What would be an ideal client? Someone listening to you right now wondering if they're a good fit for Spark. Who's a good client for you?
So there's the Pareto, the 80-20, right? 80% of our customers,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
80% of our clients are not our ideal clients. And let me explain why. These folks they are on the ropes. Their business is declining. They're having constant fights between sales and marketing and the executive people.
Yeah.
They're all blaming one another. They're firing people. They're losing contracts, and they come to us almost too late sometimes. Sometimes they do come to us too late. And so those are the 80%, and we can help them out. Don't get me wrong, but it's different than the 20%. And these are actually it's probably like 98 too. these quote unquote 20 or 2%. These are the folks.
Right?
This is the Tehran principle.
These are the hyper successful. There's tons of ego in there, and they're the Midas touch people. That their business is just killing it. And we talk with them, and they say, "Well, I don't need you. I'm doing great."
Right.
Well, what happens is that part of our value proposition is we develop leaders who create lasting business success. And that lasting part is very important because success can come and go, but unless you build a process that looks at trends and is always looking at trends, you're going to lose it.
Yeah.
I can give you tons of examples of companies that these Midas touch guys and gals that they came to us and they said, or we came to them, they're like, nope, we don't need you. 18 months later, we see their LinkedIn changed and their email changed, and they ended up closing their business because they didn't understand that lasting part.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. As far as trends go, and looking forward, you have to always be looking forward, right?
Right.
It reminds me of that book with Patrick Bet-David. What are my next 5 moves?
I never read that one. I'm reading the Choose Your Enemies wisely right now.
Yeah.
Great book.
Yeah. It is, without, we're not going to talk either side here, but how important was the election? Should that have been on small businesses' radar at the beginning of the year?
Yes.
When we talk about trends.
Yes. So trends, let me give you examples of trends. So trends aren't Ugg boots or what scarf is in season or whatever. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about big global mega trends. I'll name 6 of the top. There's probably thousands of them, right? We actually track 66 of them, but the top 6 are the gig economy, AI, the environment, demographics, mobility, and asynchronous life. Those 6 are dominating the world right now. Demographics is probably the biggest one that people don't understand. I could go up for hours talking about that. AI is clearly, everybody's talking about AI, and the other ones have different implications. But if you look at the elections, whether it's regional or national, there's a lot of major trends that are happening underneath those elections.
Yeah.
And whether you're voting for Trump, voting for Kamala, or voting for none of the above, those are your decisions need to be informed by trends. Yeah. And I want you to really pay attention and actually, if I had to say, like, go do a deep dive on something to your listeners, besides trends, besides Spark Partners, of course, shameless plug, is do a deep dive on demographics. Okay. Demographics is where people are living, how they're living, where they're moving to. This is your business at the end of the day, demographics, right? If people are afraid of China, look at their demographics. Where will they be in 10, 20 years? And, Japan, we're talking about, the baseball guy recently. Where are they going to be in 20 years?
Right.
In 20 years, for every one Japanese person working, there will be 2 retirees.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
Look at Italy. Look at the countries that have the strongest demographics right now are in Africa, where there's some of those there's like 9 kids to 1 pair of people. Whereas in the US, it's 2.1, Japan is 1.1, 1.2, South Korea. If you go to South Korea, and they will pay you money to have kids, $35,000 to have kids.
Wow.
So,
yeah. We actually have a caller. Let's see. Is it Jamal or Jamar? Who do we got on the line?
Jamar.
Jamar Jordan.
JJ.
What is up, fellas? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm sitting up here doing taxes because, the extension is up on the 15th and listen to this great show.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question for the guest there.
Manny. Yeah.
Maybe you touched on, Manny.
Sure.
Great job, by the way, Manny.
Thank you.
How important is pricing when it comes to small businesses, pricing for your services, and just kind of expand on that because I have some clients that's going through that right now.
So price should be directly tied to value. Once you start arguing on price, you are going to race to the bottom.
Mm.
And if you look at companies like, I'm just use this as an example, like the Dollar Store and Family Dollar, they were white hot for a while, and now they're not doing too well because people are realizing that you kind of get what you pay for.
Right.
And so when I'm talking with somebody about price, and especially if it's a product or even a service, and they say, well, I really can't afford that. And my answer is usually, okay, well, let's work on something that you can afford, which means I decrease the value.
Right.
So if you look at the world's the strongest brands, LVMH, you know who they are, right? LVMH is Louis Vuitton.
Okay.
Bernard Arnault is one of he might be number 1 or number 2 right now, richest men in the world. And he is all about making sure that the brand is untouched. That value is there. Okay. Do you think that Lamborghini advertises anywhere?
Nope.
No. There's a reason why.
They don't have to.
You know that Rolls-Royce does not go to car shows, but they do go to air shows.
Ooh.
So think about that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to be a luxury brand, but what I am saying is that make sure that you understand your value and you price appropriately. And if you're delivering a boatload of value, people will not have any hesitation to pay for that value.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Jamar?
Yes, great information and great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, see you soon, buddy.
All right. Bye.
That was good. That was good. I like Jamar.
Yeah,
He's a good dude. Yeah.
He's a good guy.
He's
He's authentic, He's,
I know. Ex-military. You get him talking about organization and leadership. Yeah, he goes on forever. Good dude. Manny, we got 2 minutes left. Do you have any last golden nuggets? Anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, I'll kind of churn. We talked a lot about the outside world. We began talking a little bit about the inside, right? Looking in the mirror. We even talked about that earlier about, looking in the mirror, whatever. And there's one thing there. There's a kind of a silent killer in looking in the mirror that could be very devastating to your business. And that is the B word, bias. Okay.
Wow.
Go down another deep dive and understand bias. There's confirmation bias. There's a bunch of types of bias. But bias is one of the things that will inhibit you from growth. And it's one of these things that people don't talk about. Like when I do interviews now, I do the interviews solely on the phone first because I do not want to be biased by the person. Because if they walk through the door and they look like Sean Campbell and we relate to one another, then I'm going to be I'm going to want to hire you versus somebody that I want to hire for their skills only.
Right. Interesting. I think we've all been kind of guilty of that.
No, absolutely.
At one point or another.
Absolutely. Look what they're wearing, what they look like,
Yeah. Very interesting. So, Manny, how can someone get a hold of you here?
Yeah, so they can get a hold of me. They can email me at Manny, MANNY, at sparkpartners.com. We have a website, sparkpartners.com. And then we also have a YouTube channel and, of course, our podcast, the Business Trendsetter Podcast. We're also doing a segment called the Innovator segment that is for innovators. So get a hold of me.
Nice. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for, sticking it out with us. I know you need to get to the dentist. Hope everything feels better later on.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week in the Marketing Corner.